Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
I'm husband.
And I'm wife.
Together, we're reading the Bible for the very first time.
We grew up without religion and wanted to know what all the fuss was about.
Well, what have we learned so far?
That God is a dick, and apparently some people believe in talking donkeys.
We're not trying to pass ourselves off as experts.
Nope, we're just reading the Bible for the first time and giving our first take reaction.
If you'd like to join us in this venture, you might consider starting at episode 1.
Otherwise, jump in wherever you like.
All right, let's go read the Bible.
Yeah, let's get to it. Husband!
Wife!
Do you know what we're doing today?
I believe we just finished a book of the Bible.
We did. We finished another book. We finished Solomon's Song of Songs and Canticle of Canticles.
Song of Solomon.
Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that means that today we're going to be doing what?
Wrapping it up and talking about the book as a whole.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So erotic poetry wrap up.
Yeah.
Got it. You ready to do this?
I am.
Let's go do it.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to talk about Song of Songs.
Okay.
Song of Solomon.
Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
You try to confuse everybody all the way through this.
Well, that's because
it's got a million names, and I'm just going to say them all every time.
Because it doesn't have a specific name.
No, I know.
If it can't be bothered.
I like the keep it simple, stupid,
I'd like to say it is stupid, so I'm going to prove that by every time I mention it, not knowing what it's called.
Got it.
So
okay.
I thought we would talk a little bit about the book itself first, and then we talk a little bit about who is the Shulamite woman.
Got it.
Who she be.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, looking at the erotic poetry itself, it is exactly what it looks like it is. It's a celebration of sexual love, both human and divine, and it's rooted in the fertility religions of the ancient Near East.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's also about the sacred marriage rite and the funeral feast.
That's actually interesting because as we were reading through it, you mentioned
they compared,
and they compared a lot of the beauty to, spices and things of the Far East.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Right. Kind of makes me feel like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like I picked up on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's awesome.
So the question keeps coming up: what the fuck is a collection of erotic poems doing in the Bible?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great question.
There are several different theories. If we discovered the book today, there's absolutely no fucking way it would be included. I mean, that just goes without saying.
Right. Yeah.
But it's fun to say.
Does not fit.
Because sex.
Yeah. That too.
Sex is natural. Sex is good. Not everybody does it, but everybody should. Yeah. So many ancient rabbis were very uneasy about the book's inclusion in the canon.
I don't doubt it.
Right. As a matter of fact, even some that did say, yeah, let's go ahead and do this, they were also quick to follow up with, but absolutely, y'all will not be singing this shit in the bars. And there was one guy that even went so far as to say, and hey, preachers and priests and whatever else, teachy guys that are going around,
pastors, etc.
Yeah,
whatever.
Being in charge
all
of
y'all
passing on the word of God.
Right.
FYI, if you are not right spiritually, and dedicated to being, what's that word? Celibate.
Right.
Don't
read this.
Don't read it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was going to say, actually, this is probably the book that they kept, underneath their mattress,
Right? This was their Playboy magazine. Yeah. That there's more truth in that than you might have thought. Yeah. So the song was accepted into the Jewish canon of scripture in the 2nd century CE.
Okay.
Right. After a period of controversy in the 1st century. So it was should we, shouldn't we? And then in the 2nd century of this side of the continuum, they were like, well, okay.
Right.
And it was a result of many rabbis seeing this text as merely secular love poetry and not worthy of canonization. So they were like, this is just sex.
Right.
This has no religious value.
I mean, it really doesn't insofar as I can see.
Right.
There is no religious value that I can see.
No.
But not with regard to Christianity and Judaism.
Right. You'd have to try really hard.
Right.
And they do. They try really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
They take the allegory tact.
Right.
And I'm like, you can, but that's just like your opinion, man.
Right.
It was considered as one of the books to be excluded.
Okay.
And it was accepted as canonical only because of its supposed authorship by Solomon and based on allegorical reading where the subject matter was taken to be not sexual desire, but God's love for Israel. So that's where it started.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, putting this on the bookshelf, a lot of people maybe suggest that it was just a book in his library that was what's it called? Opera being done at the time.
Okay.
That was like trendy. And so it was like just one of those things on his bookshelf.
Got it.
And that kind of, there's like almost not stage direction, but like, and then these people say, and the chorus responds.
Right. No, yeah.
And I mean, you can actually picture it in your head as a musical done on stage.
That's actually a good point. Yeah.
So that's my thought on it. I kind of lean towards that it was a production and he had it on a shelf.
I could see that. That makes actually a lot of sense in my head anyway.
Sure. Now, some still today avoid this book altogether. Okay. Remember when I was saying that if you don't feel like you're close to God, let me tell you exactly what this guy said. Okay. His name was Origen. And he lived circa 185 to 254. Okay. So like way early on. Okay.
Yeah.
He was an important teacher in the early church, and he said of the Song of Solomon, I advise and counsel everyone who is not yet rid of vexations of the flesh and blood and has not ceased to feel the passions of this bodily nature to refrain from reading the book and the things that will be said about it. Now, he felt that he was prepared because he castrated himself when he was a young man.
Oh, man.
So he was definitely removed from wanting that kind of pleasure.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm good.
Right.
So
that's just disturbing.
Dedication to the Lord.
Mutilating yourself for God.
Yeah.
That's disturbing to me.
That's higher level bullshit.
It really is. It really is.
Song of Songs is one of the overtly mystical biblical texts for the Kabbalah. Remember, that's that mystical stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. It gives an interpretation on all the Hebrew Bible. Okay. The Kabbalah does.
Yeah.
And following the dissemination of the Zohar, remember that was the Kabbalah book thing?
Okay. Yeah.
In the 13th century, so,
right.
Still early on.
Right.
Jewish mysticism took on a metaphorically anthropomorphic erotic element, and Song of Songs is an example of this. So.
Okay.
There's that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talk about this all the time, but you can twist the Bible to be whatever you want it to be, right? There's so many different takes on it. And especially if you take into account some of the things that are left out of it, you can basically write whatever version of Christianity or Judaism that you want.
Of course you can.
It's just a matter of how you interpret it.
Listening to hateful preachers pull out pieces.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I could be just as emphatic by pulling out all the things that disagree with that, all the contradictions.
Yeah.
If I was an asshole blustery on a stage like you and saying, this is absolutely the truth and the way because it says right here and consider, verse blah, 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 blah. Like if I was a blustery asshole, I could totally be the same way. I could be as emphatic and like, this is the final word.
Right. Which more to the point, the way that we're reading the Bible, I think we're doing it on purpose in such a way that it is literal-ish because you can interpret these things in so many different ways.
Right.
Like, we want to leave it up to the individual to take it as we read it and as we respond to it because who gets to be the ultimate authority on how it does get interpreted?
That's what bothers me.
Right.
These people that get up on stage and say, my interpretation is the interpretation. And I'm like, who the fuck are you?
Right. There certainly is no God telling us this is the way to interpret it.
Right.
So
what gives you that authority?
Right.
Like, what do you think gives you that authority besides the fact that you're a blustery male?
Right.
And we all know how wife feels about fucking blustery ass males.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Right.
So Jewish tradition reads this book as an allegory of the relationship between God and Israel,
Right.
which we already knew.
Yep.
And in modern Judaism, certain verses from the song are read on Shabbat Eve or at Passover,
Okay.
which marks the beginning of the grain harvest, as well as commemorating the Exodus from Egypt. And I think I said some of that like up front before we started the book.
Yeah, I remember you saying some
but
of that.
it just kind of bears repeating when we talk about different ways that people read this.
Yeah.
And according to Jewish tradition, it's supposed to symbolize the love between the Jewish people and their God.
Got
which,
it.
That's nice, whatever.
But that's not how it reads.
No.
I mean, I can't
It's
get over
really not.
Like I tried really hard to imagine it as
Mm-hmm.
an allegory for the relationship between God and Israel, and I couldn't get myself there.
Because it's not.
Right.
It's just not. When we get into who was the Shulamite woman, there's a better theory for what this shit is all about.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So the literal subject of the Song of Songs is love and sexual longing between a man and a woman, and it has little or nothing to say about the relationship of God and man.
Okay.
Which,
right.
Like,
yeah.
no shit.
Right.
And in order to find such a meaning, it was necessary to resort to allegory, treating the love that the song celebrates as an analogy for the love between God and church. So the Christian church's interpretation of the song began as evidence of God's love for his people,
Okay.
both collectively and individually.
Sure.
Which, you know,
I mean,
that's very
again,
similar to Jewish tradition.
Right. Right.
Well,
you had said earlier that it was the relationship between God and church or whatever, or Jesus and church or whatever. But either way, you're still doing a heavy mental acrobats to get there.
Yes. You're either saying, let's pretend that this is about God and Israel. Or you're like, no, let's pretend this is about God, Jesus, and the church as the bride.
Right.
And it's like, no, neither one.
Right.
There is no fucking that is done with any of those things. This was about fucking, you guys.
Yeah, it really was.
And let's not pretend otherwise, you sillies. Over the centuries, the emphasis of interpretation shifted. First, which I found this interesting, like how they read it shifted over time.
Yeah.
Okay. So first, they read the song as a depiction of the love between Christ and the church. The 11th century, they added a moral element. And this is just the Christians I'm talking about now.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Right.
Like we already see that it went from a shift from the way the Jewish interpret it still today. And now
how the Christians interpret it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so first it was just the Christ and the church, the end. Then in the 11th century, they added a moral element. And then in the 12th century, they started interpreting the bride as the Virgin Mary.
Oh,
keeping herself chaste.
I don't see how you get there, but okay.
Yeah, I don't either, but that's interesting.
Right.
And with each new reading, it would absorb the previous interpretations.
Got it.
So it didn't ever replace the old interpretations. It just kind of adapted them the way the Christian religion does.
Well, and what I know about Christian religion in general is that they never read an entire story. Like they pick out bits and pieces that are convenient for their interpretation as to how they want to present it. And so I could see you picking it apart and using this verse and that verse to make it say what you want it to say.
Exactly.
But you can't read that whole thing in full and come up with that same fucking message.
No,
it's not there.
It's not. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. So, as you just said, these theological themes are not found explicitly in the poem, but rather come from a theological reading.
Right.
So, let's pretend. Okay?
Right. A cherry-picked version.
Yes. Nevertheless, what is notable about this approach is the way it leads to conclusions not found in the overtly theological books of the Bible. So, there's nothing to support any of these ideas of
anywhere
let's
else in
pretend.
the Bible.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Those books reveal, I found this really, really, really interesting. Okay. The other books of the Bible, they reveal an abiding imbalance in the relationship between God and man, ranging from slight to enormous.
Right.
Like, the relationship between God and man is completely just...
Right.
They're...
God wins every fucking time.
Yeah, he's so powerful, he's strong, I'm a piece of shit.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Reading songs as a theological metaphor produces quite a different outcome.
It's more of an intimate relationship with God and a very close relationship with God.
One in which the two partners are equal, bound in a committed relationship.
Right.
So it doesn't even hold up under that scrutiny.
Right. But that's convenient for a more liberal take on the Bible. Mm-hmm. But again, you're still cherry picking. You're still taking what you want from it to make it what you want.
Exactly.
And you're leaving out the other shit where God is an asshole
mm-hmm.
and killing people and just like, fucking shit up left and right.
But love. And then when you're like, okay, so love. And then they're like, no, not love. And it's like, what? You just said, no, only that one time.
Right.
And they're like,
it's
Christ is love. And you're like, so Christ is love. And they're like, oh, but not really and always. And, you're too soft.
The part that bugs me about the Bible is the many, many, many inconsistencies in it. Mm-hmm. And that's just where we're at so far. And I know there's more to come.
Yeah.
It's so...
annoying.
Yeah.
Infuriating.
It really is.
Irritating. Vexing. In modern times, the poem has attracted the attention of feminist biblical critics.
I can see that.
With some treating it as an exemplary text. Because she was in charge of her own body and self, and she stood up and decided whomst she would fuck and whomst not.
I get that, but if you're reading that portion of this book, you have to have also read the bit where she's underage. And I know that there's no explicit text saying
I'm going to get to that when we talk about who is the Shulamite woman.
All right.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
So hold on to that thought.
I'm holding.
Okay.
I'm trying.
I mean, I'm the one that brought up, hey, titty-sized grapes, this is a kid.
No, I know, but then when you pointed it out to me and we read a little bit further, it was like, oh,
so
Jesus.
Obvious.
Right.
Yeah. But we'll get to that, okay? So continuing talking about how Christianity treats the book, the song.
Yeah.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints specifically rejects the Song of Solomon as inspired scripture. So they're like, no, it's not even part of
not even in their Bible.
No, It's not canon for them.
So we can't talk to the Jehovah's Witnesses about that then?
I'm like, let's talk about the Song of Songs. And they'll be like, what's that? That's not in our book.
Here, let me pull out my Bible. Let's read through it together. Yeah. Maybe we'll learn something.
Since we both love Christ so much.
Yeah.
We're all going to heaven, right?
Yeah.
But we're not.
That would be interesting. Like, it's good to know that that's not in that book because that would be an interesting little exercise if anybody cared to do it.
Yeah. Only if you tell me how old was the Shulamite woman. Who's the Shulamite woman?
I am going to need you to record that and send it to us if you do it.
Yes.
So.
Yes, definitely. So now we've talked about how the Jewish and how the Christians read the book. Let's talk about the Muslims a little bit.
Okay.
So Muslim apologist Harris Zafar presents the traditional... This is so interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting. Presents the traditional Muslim contention that the Song of Songs mentions Muhammad by name in chapter 5, verse 26.
Okay.
I know. I was like, how the fuck do you get that?
So I take it that this is in the Quran as well. Is that
apparently?
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I haven't read the Quran, so I can't tell you. But if they have an opinion on it, then I would imagine so. Right. So I was like, how did you get Muhammad out of any of that? But let's not forget we're reading it in English.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So chapter 5, verse 26 of Song of Songs is, his mouth is most sweet. He is altogether lovely. Okay. Like, where is Muhammad in that? Right. Zafar argues that in the original Hebrew, those last two words are pronounced Muhammadim with the suffix im, expressing respect and greatness as in the Hebrew word Elohim. Okay. All right. So Muhammadim, Elohim. As the first translations long preceded Muhammad's births. Let me try that sentence again.
Sure.
As the first translations of this book long preceded Muhammad's birth, translators, he suggests, not knowing any better, adopted the more mundane reading that Jews and Christians still use today. So Zafar also supports the view that the Song of Songs is not a love poem narrated by a man about a woman, but is instead a poem narrated by God about the people of Israel. So very similar to the Jewish tradition, except that he believes that the name of God via Muhammad is mentioned in this Bible.
Got it. So it's also
in this story.
Prophetic then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah.
That is very similar to the Jewish interpretation, except for.
Okay.
And actually, he raises a valid point. I can't argue it because I don't know enough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're not going. I mean, it's hard enough to keep up with what we're trying to learn about the Bible and everything, let alone English. Dive into all the stuff on the
interpretation
Quran about,
of language.
Right.
Yeah. So to me, that is a valid point. May or may not be true, but worthy of consideration.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So others see this book primarily as a drama dealing with three characters. There's Solomon, there's a simple country shepherd, and there's the young maiden. Okay.
All right.
And I didn't really understand that there were three people.
I didn't either.
Like I didn't.
I thought that the
country shepherd and Solomon were like the same person.
Yeah, that's kind of how I thought.
But there are interpretations where no, there's two different guys.
Oh.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
And that story is the one that makes.
So is this like a love triangle or something?
Yes, actually, and it makes a lot of sense when we get into this more.
Okay, all right,
okay?
Yeah.
When we talk about who the fuck is the Shulamite woman.
Sure,
okay?
Yeah.
So the idea is that Solomon one day traveled through his kingdom in this version of the story.
Yeah.
And he saw the young maiden and was captivated by her beauty. Though she was betrothed to the simple shepherd, Solomon brought her back to his palace and tried to win her affection with all lavish gifts and loving words.
Oh.
Though her resolve wavered, just before she gave in to Solomon's attention and affection, she fled his palace and went back to her simple shepherd, her true love.
Oh, this makes a lot more sense, actually.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because, okay, let's talk about this. First of all, she refers to herself early on. She's like, I'm black, but still lovely. Right?
Right.
Now, what that means is that she was out working in the fields. And the reason that she was out working in the fields, the vineyards,
right.
Her brothers had placed her there in order to keep her working, keep her busy. You know, their job was to oversee her and make sure that she was kept chaste.
Right.
So not only did they keep her busy, but they quote unquote made her less attractive.
Sure.
Okay. So it was like all a ploy, right?
Yeah.
So she's out there working in the fields and she's betrothed to this farm boy.
Yep.
Farm boy, fetch me that picture. And she's fine with that because they love each other.
Right.
Okay. And then Solomon and his dudes camp nearby.
Okay.
And either Solomon wandered by and saw her in the fields, or his guys were like, dude, there's this hot babe over there. You got to come see this chick.
Right.
So either way, he sees her, and even though she's quote unquote ugly or whatever, just from working in the sun, which that's just like your opinion, man. Again,
yeah,
you
right,
know?
right.
He's quite smitten with her, right?
Okay.
So he takes her away. Now, think about when she tries to run away and she's beaten up by the guards.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They've been told to keep her in the palace.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
And then remember when she says, you could give me all the gold and it still means nothing?
Oh,
right?
My God.
Right? Like, I'm getting chills because I'm like, this story makes so much more sense with this interpretation.
Yeah.
And then he is talking about jealousy.
Yeah.
He's jealous because he can't do anything to win this girl's love. And there are parts of it that when she's thinking about sex and stuff, those are dream sequences.
Okay.
Which, if we are looking at this as a performance performed on stage, that would make sense.
Sure.
Because then she awakens from the
this
dream.
puts a whole new light on it.
Right?
Yeah.
It actually makes it a story that's interesting instead of just weird and lewd.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. So, at the end, she goes back to her true love and they're allowed to be betrothed.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's like Solomon is just like looking on this going, man, oh man. Like, this is, you know, I lost what could have been the love of my life and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So, there's that.
Okay. Yeah.
So, let's talk about the Shulamite woman now.
Sure.
Right? You're like, I see you just staring off into space.
Well,
I'm
trying to think back on everything we read.
It's almost like I want to reread it now.
I mean, I don't.
I
but
don't.
I mean,
I don't. But I
kind of do.
I know. Like, wait, this makes me understand things so much better.
Right.
Maybe. Kind of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely I might actually go back and re-listen to our episodes just because I'm like, what? Okay. Right? Okay. I need to hear how this works out. Because it's completely different from how I was taking it. Yeah, I had
no idea that there was even the possibility that there were two dudes.
Right. I mean, I definitely mixed them into one person. So.
And most people do.
Right.
But this other theory has been put forth and is supported by many.
I like it. I
like it too. Yeah. I like it too. And it fits in with the understanding that it was probably a performance.
Sure.
The whole thing. And that it wasn't really Solomon at all.
That's so actually really amazing.
Right?
I mean, in the context of the historical relevance of this book and this story.
Yes. Yes. Just as a piece of history, not as a biblical text.
Right.
Just the way anything that we found, like dinosaur bones, is
sure.
So cool, man.
Right.
Yeah. So the maiden is most likely called the Shulamite because she came from an unidentified place called Shulam.
Okay.
Many scholars consider Shulamite to be synonymous with Shunammite, a person from Shunem, because that was another place that was mentioned in the Bible elsewhere.
Got it.
Shunem was a village in the territory of Issachar, north of Jezreel, and south of Mount Gilboa.
Okay.
If you got a map, and that means something to you.
Yeah.
So one theory on the identity of the Shulamite is that she is the daughter of Egypt's king. Now that doesn't
track with me.
Yeah, because she would not be out in the fields.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Whom Solomon married, which
that also doesn't track
at all.
Exactly.
Right. But there is no evidence supporting this theory in the Song of Solomon.
Okay.
So it's a theory that's maybe she was.
Right.
And then everybody's but probably not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So another speculation points to Abishag. You remember her?
The name sounds familiar, but not.
She was the young Shunammite who served King David in his old age. She was the kiddo that came in and warmed his body.
Oh, damn.
Right? It is plausible that Abishag is the Shulamite. We know she was from Shunem.
Okay.
She was specifically stated as from Shunem.
Yeah.
We know she was from there. She could also be... Shunem could be the same place as Shulam.
Okay.
So, they've kind of mixed those up in places. It could be the same place. So, we've got one girl in the whole Bible that's from here.
Yeah, and so maybe.
And we already know that Abishag was a young girl, 12.
Right.
Sent in to warm the body of a king.
Yeah.
And remain chaste or whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they made a big fucking deal about saying how chaste she was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Abishag would have been known to David's son, Solomon, because of that.
That's true.
And Solomon's half-brother, Adoniah, remember, attempted to have Abishag as his own wife, and Solomon prevented the union.
Huh.
Do you remember all of that? That was all in First Kings.
Kind of.
Adoniah was trying to claim that Abishag was his because he got to take his father's wives and concubines.
Okay.
And
that's
Solomon was like, A, they weren't married. B, she wasn't really a concubine. And C, fuck you, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
So there was all that.
Sure.
Now that doesn't necessarily fit in with Solomon having discovered her in the fields.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting, I'll consider that.
Right. No, I mean, it makes more sense than the last one, the queen.
Yeah. I don't think she's the daughter of any king or queen.
Right,
she's just a kid caught up
in some crazy shit.
She's a young, pretty girl in the wrong place in the wrong era.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Solomon uses passionate language to describe his bride and their love. This is going back to the idea that Solomon married her, okay? Which I don't think happened.
Right.
Solomon clearly loved the Shulamite according to this person's interpretation.
Sure.
Okay. He admired her character as well as her beauty. The bride and groom were obviously and passionately in love, and there was mutual respect and friendship between them. And this points to the fact that the Song of Solomon is the story of Solomon's first marriage. before he sinned by adding many other wives. You know?
I mean,
the love of his life.
Technically, in the Old Testament, there's not a big, like, they never cover that you can't marry more than one woman.
Yes, they did.
Oh, did they?
Yes, they did.
I must have forgot about that.
You did forget because you commented on it at the time. Like, I thought they weren't supposed to have, quote unquote, too many wives.
Oh, well, yeah, but too many. But but it wasn't specifically more than one. It was too many. But they really
wanted you to have only like one,
right.
maybe two.
Right.
Okay. And it was mostly, if you have more than one, it was supposed to be for progeny to pass on your land and belongings to make sure that everything stays in the family.
But it seemed like an awful lot of people in the OT have multiple wives.
Of course they did. It was very convenient for men. And you know what? Let's be fair. It was probably also very convenient for women because they were forced into these marriages, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be nice to have to share the household responsibilities? And if you don't really want to be fucking this guy, wouldn't it be nice to
pass that off too?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, I mean, was kind of like, yay, it's your turn. I'm tired of fucking this dude.
Yeah, right.
So, whoever she was Solomon's first and truest love, this person believes. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
So that...
But I like the one story about the three. Like the you know, the person she was betrothed to, and then and King Solomon, and then her.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
I thought that made everything click into place. Now, you had a question, but how old was she?
Right.
Because that was my original question.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the context of this 3-person love triangle, this would be her as a child when they're referring to her as a child, and the brother's trying to keep her safe out in the fields, right?
Yeah.
Making her work out there.
Because they're holding her for marriage to this other person that she's been betrothed to.
Exactly.
Right.
And so part of the story takes place in the past when she's a child, and part of it takes place when she's an adult looking back on those times.
Got it.
And she's saying, this is why I'm so dark-skinned today, and this is why all of these things, but my brothers had kept me safe. And, you know, that I like that better. I like it better because that's a little bit more comfortable than thinking of, you know, Abishag the child who had to keep the body of an old man warm.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that was an interesting recap of that that book. I definitely learned some things today.
I did too.
And I'm like I said, I might even have to go back and re-listen to this one because it's it puts a whole new light on the whole damn thing.
Right. It makes it a little more tolerable, and it makes it more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we got one more episode to do for this book, which will be
You're Always Wrong.
Except I'm right.
You're not, though.
And then we may be taking... Well, we're not going to be doing anything on Saturday, I don't think.
Right.
So, and then we'll be back on Sunday, I think, with a...
Sacrilegious book club.
That's right, yes. And then back on Monday, we'll be starting a new book.
Isaiah chapter 1. We are entering the final stages of the Old Testament. We're entering the last larger collection of the Old Testament.
Ooh.
That's the prophets, the minor prophets.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll look forward to doing that, and we'll see you guys then.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Hey, wife. I guess that's the end?
But husband, that's just sad.
It doesn't have to be. We are on lots of social media platforms like Twitter. Our handle there is sacrilegious_D.
For D's nuts.
Oh my God. Stop doing that. Anyway, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. There's a link to all of our social media sites at our website.
Ooh, we have a website?
Yeah, it's sacrilegiousdiscourse.com, where you can also find a link to our merch shop.
We have a merch shop?
Yep. We have podcast-themed clothing, mugs, notebooks, and more, as well as an atheist and science-themed products.
Wow, our fans should really go check that out right now.
Definitely. They can get in touch with us by sending an email to sacrilegiousdiscourse@gmail.com. But before they do that, we could really use some help.
Oh yeah? With what?
Well, it's not free running the podcast, and we need some financial support in order to get better equipment, which will free up time so we can concentrate on our podcast and our fans.
Okay, so what should they do?
Head over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse and sign up as a contributor on our podcast. Supporters there receive additional bi-weekly episodes that we record just for our Patreon members for as little as $2 a month.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using.
And Apple Podcast reviews help us out tremendously.
Like and subscribe. Leave an Apple review. Join us on Twitter. Support us on Patreon. That's a lot of instructions. Don't forget to say thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.